Marketers, I have a solution that can demonstrate the value of your content efforts, show your position in the company's revenue, and ensure you have a clear path to content ROI. Have you ever created a piece of content that looked great, got approved, maybe even performed well, but sales never used it? If you're in B2B marketing, you've probably experienced this. You build what seems like a strong asset within a campaign, you send it to sales, and nothing happens. It sits in a folder, it gets ignored, or worse, sales recreate something else on their own. That's where your marketing momentum and respect dies. Because when content isn't usable inside real sales conversations, it doesn't matter how polished it is, it doesn't move deals, it doesn't build confidence, it doesn't appear to support deal closure. At the same time, the teams that win don't just create content, they pressure test it. They know before publishing whether sales can use it in a live deal. I'm about to show you a framework that protects your organization from creating content that looks good but doesn't move the needle, and that ensures whatever you create actually supports sales execution. Keep watching and I'll give you a practical readiness test you can apply to every asset before it goes live, so you stop producing content for storage and start producing content that sales and leadership love because it drives business. The framework I'm going to show you now is called the Ready framework. It's called Ready because it determines whether your content is actually ready for sales, ready for your sales team to use. But before I walk you through Ready, you need to understand the larger operating model it belongs to, because if you isolate Ready as just enablement, you'll miss the real power. You see, Ready works best when it's part of a system designed to connect content directly to revenue support, not just brand presence. And once you see the full system, the Ready framework will be the most powerful because it exists to protect your organization from wasted content production and weak sales enablement. It's my strong opinion that content only creates revenue impact when it survives contact with real sales conversations. So the overarching model for connecting content to revenue is called RevCo. RevCo stands for Revenue Content Operations. It's a model developed by Content Master to build, operate, and scale content as a revenue-supporting system through cumulative impact. Because most marketing teams create content in cycles. They get approval, they create assets, they launch, and then they move on to the next campaign. RevCo builds content as an infrastructure. Instead of creating assets that expire, it creates assets that support pipeline conversations, reinforces positioning, and stacks value over time. In other words, it becomes an arsenal of deal-driving and reinforcing content. RevCo has 4 components, and Ready is one of them. Again, Ready ensures that what you produce is actually usable in the sales process. Now, let me show you the Ready framework because it determines whether your content is usable in live sales conversations, whether it reduces friction inside deals, and whether it actually moves revenue forward. Ready is the operational test that protects your team from creating content that looks impressive but doesn't perform where it matters. This is the Ready framework. First, the R in the Ready framework is relevance. Is the content relevant? Relevant means the content is tied to real buyer questions, objections, and decision points. Not what we assume buyers care about, and not high-level thought leadership for awareness. It must reflect what buyers are actually asking during evaluation. Because if it doesn't mirror real friction inside deals, sales won't use it. It has to be relevant to the deals, and it must be relevant to your deal makers, your sales team. Relevant content should be designed to connect directly to real buyer conversations. Next in the framework is E for easy. Is it easy to share? Sales should be able to send it immediately. It shouldn't be hidden in complicated software or something they have to log into to get to it. It needs to be clear, in a format that is familiar and usable to them. They need simple links, pre-prepared content, and regular notifications of new content existence. Often sales teams aren't even aware of content that marketing's made. Marketing thinks that because they told sales about a content repository months ago, that sales is going to keep an eye on that repository or folder for future content. It just doesn't work that way. Marketing needs to frequently inform sales of new content and make sure that it's easy for them to find and use. If sales has to search for it, interpret it, or summarize it before sending, it is not enablement. It's extra work. And sales does not adopt extra work. So easy content lowers internal friction and increases content usage and adoption. The A in ready is answers. Does the content answer buyer stage concerns? Ready content must speak to evaluation and decision making. Not just surface level awareness, not just industry trends. It should address what buyers worry about when they are close to making a decision. If it doesn't answer questions or help them evaluate, it doesn't help the deal close. You have to have sufficient content that answers buyers' questions at each stage of the decision process, and this content best comes when sales communicates their needs to marketing. In my book, Cash, the first 4 chapters are dedicated to communication between sales and marketing. Much of this deals with getting feedback from sales so that marketing can create content that answers buyers' questions and speeds up the decision-making process for the customer. If you're interested in the book, you can get a copy at aleejudge.com/cash. Okay, the next checkpoint in the READY framework is D for de-risk. Does the content de-risk the decision for the buyer? Strong enablement content reduces uncertainty. It clarifies trade-offs, it sets expectations, it explains outcomes. Buyers stall when risk feels unclear. So content that de-risks builds comfort, and comfort builds movement. In other words, content that reduces the perceived risk of taking the next step in the buyer's process increases the buyer's confidence to move forward. So make sure your content makes the buyer feel like they are taking less of a risk by choosing your solution over the competitors. Finally, the Y in the READY framework is yield. Does the content yield momentum? The best enablement content doesn't just inform, it advances the deal. It creates a clear next step, it strengthens alignment, it increases confidence, and it moves the conversation forward. If your content doesn't move the conversation or deal forward, then the content is neutral at best. Even information content should move the deal slightly forward by de-risking and providing answers. Each content touchpoint that keeps a customer in the funnel is momentum, and yield means your content is serving its purpose to move a deal forward. That's the READY framework. It consists of relevance, ease, answers, de-risk, and yield. READY is the sales enablement readiness check. It determines whether content is usable inside live sales conversations. It protects your organization from creating content that looks good but doesn't move deals. Now, when you zoom back out to RevCo, which is the operating model that ensures your content supports revenue through cumulative impact, READY is the component that ensures your content survives real-world sales execution. Without READY, you create content that dies in a content management folder. But with READY, you create deal support that your sales team becomes hungry for. This shows that marketing has value to the revenue team. Together, they transform content from a marketing deliverable into revenue infrastructure. READY makes your revenue content operations practical inside the sales process. You should know that READY is one of the 4 components of RevCo, so check out the other videos to learn about the full revenue content operations model and the other components, Sauce, Voice, and Trace. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel if you want to continuously strengthen the connection between your content and your company's revenue. See you on the next one.